Hi, welcome back to Night After Night. My special guest tonight is the producer, the manager, the lead singer, and the musician of a group that has sold over 50 million albums to date, Jethro, Tull. And this is their new album called Catfish Rising. Please welcome Ian Anderson. How you doing?
I'm doing very well indeed. It's an extraordinary box, this, isn't it? Notice this cunning degree of sort of flecked appearance. It looks like a used box, doesn't it? I've only just noticed that. I mean, it doesn't look like you're even getting a new album box. It looks like sort of a recycled one. It's a strange, and that's real wood.
That is
the penalties of going, the great trouble to use a great, beautiful piece of ebony and have all this inlaid in it, and it actually looks like a cheap piece of recycled cardboard at the end of it.
It does, but, you know, you buy the CD and you get about $50 worth of wood there.
Yeah.
With it. Yeah. Well, you have always had interesting album covers, so let's talk about that. I mean, for a couple of years, I thought you were Jethro Tull.
Mm.
You know, like you saw the old guy. I guess that was Aqualung. On the cover of Aqualung, the old guy.
Well, that's right, and I think at the time that was designed to look a little bit like me, because we had, in our earlier days, we did have a manager who, I mean, the president, or one of the two presidents of the Chrysalis Record empire as it was becoming, and, I mean, he kind of forced us a little bit down that route of me being the focal character, which was okay, but you get into this endless spiral of if I put myself forward to do interviews or speak to the press or be the media sort of oriented one of the band, then I'm the only guy they want to talk to, so nobody else in the band gets any experience as they're developing in terms of doing that kind of thing, so they don't become very good at it, and no one wants to speak to them anyway. So I became that sort of front person, so there was obviously an emphasis on Jethro Tull, Ian Anderson having this rather interchangeable kind of an identity.
Did you fight that at first?
Absolutely, yeah.
Being the spokesperson?
Yeah, because I was only getting paid the same as the other guys, and I was having to spend all my off hours doing promo while they sat on the beach. Of course, yes. But we made a slight adjustment in the financial situation.
Well, now you're managing the group, right?
Well, managing only by sense of default, because we don't have a manager, have not, practically speaking, had a manager since about 1974, so the business end of it is fairly straightforward, really.
So you really didn't need a manager?
Well, I would argue that you don't if you are capable of taking on some of the ideas behind operating a band. It's an economic, it's a company. You employ people, you have certain costs to bring into account, you have a certain amount of earning power, you have taxes to pay, so long as you don't do anything silly and you avail yourselves of the spirited performance of highly qualified and extremely expensive accountants and tax lawyers, then, you know, you should be okay.
Let's talk about, how did you come up with the name Jethro Tull?
I didn't. It was one of the many names given to us by the booker in our agency office.
This is in London?
Yeah, when we first, I mean, well, pre-Jethro Tull, I mean, in the sort of latter part of 67.
You were the John Evan Band?
Yeah, and then the first couple of months of 68, we were going forth into the blues clubs, trying to just begin to establish an identity, a musical style, something that would intrigue the blues punters. But we weren't a mainstream blues band, so we didn't want to be called the something or other blues band or whatever. We had a different name every week. The agents had to give us a different name because we were basically not very, very good, and the only way to get rebooked into a rather small number of possible venues was to pretend to be somebody different, you know, every time we showed up. So we would literally arrive at clubs, and there would be a poster outside with a list of who was on that week. And whichever band we'd never heard of before, we figured that must be us. And we'd go and say, hi, we're the, you know, Ian Henderson's Bag of Blues, or whatever it was we were called that week.
Is that what you grew up listening to, mostly blues, your blues influence?
Yes, about the time that I first heard of the Rolling Stones. I had just about become interested through some acquaintance, you know, who was into that sort of music, about what I think actually happened in Europe before it really happened here, which was a real genuine appreciation of particularly the urban, the Chicago blues, which had been, I suppose, Chess Records and all of that sort of thing, you know, the Howling Wolves and Muddy Waters, and that started to make it big in England for reasons that none of us could possibly explain.
Did you grow up as a kid? Was the flute your first instrument?
I grew up as a kid, yeah.
No, yeah. Sorry. Okay, caught me. What do you want me to do?
It is early.
Well, it's early in the evening, wink, wink.
Of course.
Growing up with the flute, was that your first instrument?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I had been a sort of fairly less than average guitar player, but when Jethro Tull began shaping up as the people in Jethro Tull. We had a better guitar player than I was, so I abandoned guitar in favor of something else, and that something else was on the spur of the moment, and I traded my guitar for whatever caught my fancy in a music store, and a microphone seemed like a good idea. I began a long association with a particular American firm of microphone craftsmen, whose stuff I still use. Apart from that, I looked around the wall. I was quite interested in playing the cello, but I mean, that was just even weirder, you know, in the context of a blues band. So I think I bought a harmonica, and I saw this shiny sort of piece of precision engineering, and thought, I'll have a go at that, and bought this flute, took it into the van on the way away from this music store, and everybody else in the band could get at least a toot out of it. You know, that's probably a dangerous word, a whistly noise out of this flute, except me. And I was so infuriated, having spent whatever, you know, $60, $70, $80 or whatever it cost me back then, that I put it away for several months. And then at a later date did I think, well, I'd better have a second go at it. And because you don't get instruction books. If you go into your local music store and buy some Japanese, you know, synthesizer keyboard thing. I mean, you get a beautiful, great instruction manual that's just about possible to read. You know, it's like going home with a home computer. You know, you guess what you're doing for the weekend and the next few weekends. A lot of information there. But if you go and buy a good old-fashioned thing like a flute, it doesn't come with that sort of instruction manual. So I didn't know where to put my hands or which end to blow in or anything.
So you taught yourself?
Yeah, and I really had to figure it out by trial and error as to the ergonomics of the instrument. Where would you put your thumb, you know?
Well, it sounds like, I mean, you were born playing it. I mean, I had never heard a flute on a rock album before that or since. The synth is easy to explain because it's such a patently sort of ridiculous instrument to play in the context of rock and roll. Nobody, having heard me do it especially, is going to want to do that anymore, because apart from the inevitable comparison to me, and possibly one or two, dare I say, lesser lights, some people you might have heard of, like somebody in Hocus Pocus with a song. Oh, right, Hocus Pocus.
You know who?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Well, they had an album out called Growing Up as a Kid.
That's right. That's
on the
one,
B-side.
yeah. Some Dutch band, anyway, but whatever. And the guy in the Moody Blues used to, you know, get 2 or 3 notes out of it.
Yeah, but you get out there and you really riff with it. I mean, you get up, you're standing on one leg, and you're going at it like a maniac. And it's light. You know, you don't have to break it like Pete Townsend.
Well, hey, the money's right.